Hello and welcome back to another episode of Sideline Stories, and we are here for season 2, episode 1, with Mike Tully, broadcast camera operator. Hello and welcome, Mike. How you doing?
Hey Chase, thank you for having me. Doing well, doing well.
Happy to have you. So I just wanted to kind of jump into the beginning of your career, how you got started. You have a very interesting career. You work in kind of a niche field. Tell me how you got started.
Yeah, I call myself a broadcast camera operator. So I am a camera operator that works in studio television and then also live sports and live events television. Yeah, I got started. I attended the program at Sacred Heart. But before that, I actually worked in sports at a um, Division 3 conference in New York City known as a CUNYAC. And there I was a sports information director for the conference. Um, Initially, that was my first foray into working in sports, small time college athletics. Um, Everyone there works so hard and is very passionate. And I always knew I wanted to work in the media side, but that was kind of my okay, this is the first job out of undergrad college. Like, let's get started. Let's get some experience out in the working world, especially in sports. Um, but then I kind of realized that I would need more training and polish, I guess you could say, to get over to the broadcast side of sports.
Right.
And that's what led me to finding the program at Sacred Heart, the graduate program. I knew I just wanted to do a year there, get in, get out, get back to working since I had already, you know, got that ball rolling. Um, and so I did the year at Sacred Heart and not knowing what I wanted to do. Um, I did a rugby game. It was technically a rugby friendly or scrimmage, um, and that was, like, the first event I had worked at Sacred Heart, and that was in the
Oh, really?
beginning of the term, so it was probably September or August, and I was like, "Let me try camera," and I did camera for that game, and from there, I knew that's what I wanted to do, um, and I totally just jumped on that and got all the lessons I could. Obviously, we have our great professor there, Brian Thorne, who is a
Absolutely.
cameraman himself. And so, I took a liking to him and kept working at it the whole year. All I did was mostly camera, camera. Every time we had an event or the studio show that we did, which was Sports Buzz at the time. Um, so that's how I learned jib, and that translated to the next part of the story. Um, so through my connects to the CUNYAC, my first job after Sacred Heart was actually with the Brooklyn Cyclones. I did the whole summer there doing camera, and then that was really my first like long term gig that wasn't just like day by day. And then ended up at Yale Athletics because I was back home in Connecticut still, so I was working at Yale. And then eventually got lucky enough where I got an offer to go work at SNY in the city,
That's
in the
awesome.
studios, working on Mets pre and post game, Jets pre and post game, and all their programming. COVID happened, a lot of uncertainty in the broadcast world. Um, Luckily, it came out of that, added some more things to my resume, including Army football, and then from there, you really it's a type of industry where things snowball in a good way, where you meet this person, you meet that person, um, and your work speaks for itself, and you work well with people, and then all of a sudden they get jobs that they can't do, they may offer you it, or they say, "Hey, we have another opening. Like, do you want to join?" Um, it snowballed. I've worked college sports around the tri-state area. After SNY, that landed me at ESPN studios in New York, at the Seaport when they were there. And then from there, my sports like side hustles just became more and more. I mentioned Brian Thorne. He got me on a golf event in Jersey City. And that led me to joining IATI 100, which is a local union down here that does a lot of sporting events when they come to town or on the local entities like MSG and stuff like that. So I've been making inroads there. I did a lot of Big Ten football this year with Rutgers. Um, I've done F1. That wasn't exactly camera work, but I V2'd on a show where we had a studio set up in the paddock at F1. So really a lot of things. Like I said, it just
Yeah.
snowballs. And it's all very cool, but you're always, like, chasing the next thing to keep going, keep advancing yourself, so that's kinda, like, short background, and kinda how I am where I am today.
I think that's an incredible story. And how do you think like some of the like what were some of the lessons from the early days of like Sacred Heart and covering high school and college athletics? Like what did you carry with you through your career that really like stuck out to you?
Uh, the best thing about working on smaller budget broadcasts is you learn to, fix things on the fly and, like, the how much you have to make do and how much you have to actually do the setup and stuff yourself. You learn so much about, you know, what we did at Sacred Heart might have been smaller or, what's it called? Smaller setup, maybe less cameras, not as nice cameras, but it's still all the same basic building blocks you would have of going to any broadcast out there in the world. So you could
Right.
understand, like, my camera cable is going from my camera back to the control room. The basics of engineering and stuff like that, where it's like, okay, I know how things work and how to set it up. And so that you take that out into the world and you could do that. And you also just learn that you have to hustle and work well as a team. So I say sports broadcasting is a lot like sports. Maybe none of us are anywhere close to being as athletic, but you're only as good as, your 13th man on the bench if we're talking basketball or 53rd
Absolutely.
53rd man in the NFL. So everyone has to do their job in order for someone else's job to work most of the time. So, if the audio guy is doing the job and the camera guys only did their job, you'll have a broadcast with no audio, and vice versa. If the audio guy does all his job and the camera guys don't do their job, you just have a radio broadcast and it's no longer
Right.
television. Um, so really, I would say the hustle, teamwork, and then the ability to just understand like the basics of broadcasting, like how it functions. Those were the major takeaways. Um, and I would say also when you shoot college sports, you shoot a variety of everything. So you'll
Mhm.
shoot Olympic sports, you'll shoot hockey, you'll shoot stuff that you may not be able to get, uh, in the bigger markets. Like you'll be able to say, like, "Oh yeah, I've done hockey." If someone comes to you and they're like, "Hey, we need somebody for a hockey game," like you could say, "I've done it" because you've done it at the college where they offer all these sports, which is very good
Right.
about that type of way of getting in.
And so kind of talking about like working as a team and stuff, do you remember like your first real high pressure moment on a broadcast, like working camera? Like what was the first big gig for you that you think you had?
Um, I think in terms of nerves and, like, holy cow, was that first union gig I mentioned that was it was golf. I'd never shot golf. It was only a celebrity pro-am type of thing, but all of a sudden I was working, with what felt like I was on Peacock, and it was a golf director, and I was new to this whole world, and basically just trying to understand what my role is. I was there. We didn't really do so much of rehearsal, um, but I was really just going to be a camera that was going to be on the first tee with hosts, and so I did do that. But then what I didn't know throughout rehearsal, all of a sudden they were like, "Oh, you're also going to break down that whole camera and take it over to the tenth green, and you're also now doing post game interviews on handheld because you don't have utility or anything." So basically that was my first real time like, okay, wow, like they're actually depending on me a little more than just a nice built up camera with a prompter on it, um, to operate, quote unquote as like a studio camera.
Yeah.
Um, so that was definitely both technically shooting it and breaking down the camera stuff like that was challenging, but also just from a following a rundown and like the timing of everything, that was really my first big like, "Oh crap," like, and I'm working on a show where I'm a new guy and there's also all these other cameras covering the actual golf stuff, but then they're gonna come to me right when that round finishes to get the interview and find the talent and find the, person walking off the green to meet the talent, and, like, it was just this whole new level of production level that I think was the first real, "Oh, man, I have the butterflies, I have some anxiety."
Right.
Um, but when you do enough of the basics, like I was mentioning, like you don't have to think about doing the basics. You're really just focusing on the production, the timing, and that's the stuff you'll really have to focus on. But actually shooting it, you have all those fundamentals almost like playing sports again, where you don't have to think about, oh, how am I going to shoot this? All that kind of just happens. It's more so timing, where I have to be, production is what you're going to actively think about.
Right, like, your practice has made you perfect and you're ready for the moment kinda thing.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And so kinda speaking about challenges, like, what would you say, like, was, the most challenging day of your career, like, so far, or, like, a really, like, something that you had to face a lot of adversity with it?
So I would say the biggest challenge isn't so much the day of. Like I said, where if you have enough practice, that's going to carry you. It's more so the networking and putting yourself out there and really selling yourself that is definitely, I would say, the hardest part of the job. Um, Maybe not like singular day I could think of, but just getting to where you're putting yourself out there and being a good person, but also being a good worker and just trying to keep yourself going and keep yourself going to the next gig and the better gig and just keeping yourself active. As well as, working with people, helping people do the same. That's really the hardest thing going. But I would say if there's one particular day, separate of sports, it was actually I worked the last inauguration day where it was, I think, in the single digits.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and we basically went from shooting the inauguration to the usual on the Capitol to where the inauguration got moved indoors. So they had to repurpose where they were going to use us. Um, so my camera was going to be located at Capital One Arena. So all of a sudden, all the logistics changed multiple days ahead. Luckily, we had time. We kind of moved stuff around. But the day of, the security mapping changed. So on Saturday, we had set up everything a certain way, got in and out of we were on top of the roof of a hotel, and basically the whole map changed. So we had to be there at 7 a.m., I believe. And here we are running through this maze of fences and security. Like, hey, how do I get here? I can't get here. Yesterday I went this way. And so not only that, but to get to my camera, get it set up, I had to do something I've never done before, which was hook it up to a live view pack. And basically, it was, wirelessly transmitting um, to a satellite, the satellite back to the control room. And I
Okay.
think we got the shot up and ready to go because we were the opening shot of the program. Maybe there was like 30 seconds till air.
Oh
I
my.
was on the phone with people at the control room in DC just being like, hey, like, we're getting it. Don't worry, don't worry. And then after that, we were up there, it was like, I think it was single digits, maybe 5 degrees, we'll say. And then you're up there all day on this roof of a hotel, uh, producing part of the rest of the events. And it was freezing cold. And that was definitely the hardest, toughest day, but also the most rewarding when you actually get to the end of the day
Right.
and you get to like high five everybody and like say like, oh, we did it, like we survived, and let's like go to the bar and have like a beer because that was a crazy day. So
Yeah, I mean, there's something to celebrate there. That sounds like a lot of work.
yeah.
So kinda going off of that, you've worked on a lot of different, huge, projects, inaugurations being one of those things. What would you say is the biggest event, that you've covered as a camera operator?
um so I would think F1 feels like the biggest production, but because I wasn't actively working on the race, um I would say in 2020 we had the Army Navy game at West Point because of COVID. So it was at West Point for the first time, um, I think since like the 1940s. So basically, we had this cool one-off event where it was COVID, so all the rules were kind of changed. But you had the cadets from the uh, United States Military Academy, and then you had all the midshipmen from the Naval Academy there. So they were the only people in the stadium. Um, but I was covering in-house, and this Army Navy game, classic, different because it was at West Point and it was probably the last time it'll be there for a long time.
Mm,
Um, and just the pageantry around it, the president was there, the security around it. Um, you're working alongside the CBSA crew, as they call it. So the best guys from CBS, you're working with them, covering the coin toss and like all these things. And um, I would say that that's one of the biggest events I think I got to be part of, which is cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned F1. Like, what is the production like for that? I'm not too familiar with it.
So I would say what I did was I was there with ESPN and we were working on a studio set with some robotic cameras. Um, and talent would come in and out all week to do pre-race interviews or hits for Sports Center back in Bristol. So we basically built this mini set with some robotic cameras in the paddock areas, which was very cool. So if you're not familiar with F1, the track pit lane would be here, and then all the where the racers and the staff all kind of live for the week is treat their office, I guess you call it their office, and then the paddock is in between there. So we're in
Right.
the paddock, we got professionals like walking by and like celebrities and all this cool stuff. So we're in a cool spot um at F1 when it was with ESPN. Um so basically I was in charge of V2ing, which meant making sure all the connections at the beginning of the week were correct with the fiber. Um and that Bristol was getting our feed, they were getting the race feed, they were getting um, any feed they needed from the track and from Sky Sports and all that. Um, and then when it comes to the actual F1 crew, um, they're all, I believe, F1's based out of Austria or something. Um, but I just remember those guys, it's like a traveling circus. So they come in, they're also running all their cables, building up all their cameras around the set. So it's this whole big giant production for a whole week leading up to the show almost.
Yeah.
And then, the race happens. I mean, there's practice, there's qualifying. The weekend happens, and then all of a sudden, as the race is still going on, there's like an army of forklifts that come in and they're packing up because they have to get ready to travel to the next destination for F1 if
Oh
it's a
wow.
back to back type of 2 week span. Um, it's in the coolest, nicest way. It's a traveling circus where they're bringing all their stuff in the same day. The first day we got there because they're coming back from whatever stop they were at, and the production of it is just so massive and so it's logistically like almost unbelievable. It's very cool.
It sounds
Um,
like it. Yeah, it sounds like
yeah.
a huge operations like puzzle of how you make that happen.
Yeah.
But
We're basically little guys just trying to not get run over by forklifts. So we had our like high vis vests on and we're just like trying to stay out of everyone's way. Uh, because they're moving in these multi-million-dollar race cars and we're just trying to get our equipment by. So
and what's it like working a production where like, I mean, it's one thing, people can only run so fast, but a car can go, 150 plus miles an hour. What is it like to try and cover it as a camera operator? It's
so I didn't actually get to shoot the race.
Oh yes, right. You
But I
said you were V2.
But I definitely when I could, I tried to talk to some of the guys, and a lot of it for them is, like, it's muscle memory where they're gonna track this race car, if let's say they're responsible for them coming around, like, turn 10, we'll call it. Um, a lot of it's muscle memory where they're like, "Okay, I know the car is coming, to turn 10," and then I zoom out and I just whip, like, it's almost muscle memory where they're almost not even looking at their viewfinder where they're just like like fully just whipping this camera
Right.
um on the tripod or whatever. Some racetracks have built in mounts for the camera, so there's not even like a full tripod built. You'll just build like half the camera where it's on this mount by the net or the fence, I should say, and you're just whipping and you kind of build up muscle memory, which is why you get practice and qualifying leading up to the big day where you're kind of getting that muscle memory down of like, okay, I know it's going to take him 3 seconds to get by me. One, two, three, and it's gone. And the director cuts to the next camera. So it's,
Right.
it's very interesting in the sense of if the closer you are, um, camera operating at a race, the shortest amount of time you're actually on air with your tally.
Interesting. So you had mentioned robotic cameras, and I did want to kind of talk about that a little bit. So, where do you see, or where are you already seeing AI or automation show up in broadcast production, and like where is it heading?
So that's a good question. I know at NAB, which is a National Association of Broadcasters, I believe is what it's short for. Um, the technology is like already there in the sense of cameras that can track people. So if you and I were sitting here and I went like this and leaned over, the camera would be already
Like this,
pre-programmed
my
to
computer
follow.
kind of
Yeah,
falls to the
which
face.
basically like what I've noticed. Yeah, with yours. Um, so yeah, the ability for it to track humans, I think, is already there. I think it's a matter of same with robotics where it takes a while to there's a cost to getting all the systems, and if you want to do that and go for it, it's the initial upfront cost and then more so maintenance. Um, and you're getting rid of, jobs and operators,
Right,
um, but you're getting the ability to control multiple cameras for one person. So that's why in studio settings a lot of times it's become so useful and they've done it. Um, And then so that's when it comes to just, like, shooting a single, shooting studio shots, like, that technology is gonna be a little easier, but eventually, I think there's, all the players wear, like, these monitors that monitor their GPS and their heart rate and stuff like that, and I think there will be eventually in the future a way for them to be, like, use those chips to pair up with the cameras, so say you wanted I'm thinking of in soccer because I know they're prominent in wearing those that let's say you want an ISO shot of Messi for his whole match, you'd be able to set up a robotic camera where you say,
they already have
follow
this.
this. I think there's been talks of it.
Oh wow,
Um, but in the sense of they're trying, they're gonna build the ability to be able to track things
right.
automatically. Where I think there'll still be manual cameras will be um the ability to like create artistic shots on the fly is something I mean, maybe I'll be wrong and this won't exist in a couple years, but, for cameras that can create, like, an artistic shot, like, to know, "Hey, that was a huge play, like, go get the crowd," and slowly zoom in down to, like, the guy who scored or reverse where it's like the guy just scored and you pulling out to reveal the whole student section going crazy and he's celebrating with them. Um, so when it comes to, like, game coverage, I think that I could see that being automated and stuff like that. Um, but I think the human element and artistic storytelling is something that can't be fully replaced. I could definitely be
I
wrong, and
completely
hopefully I'm
agree
not.
with you there. I
Yeah,
think you hit the nail right on the head on that.
yeah.
Um, so w- some things kind of related to the future, but off the AI topic. But what technical skills should students focus on to kind of future proof their careers? This is kind of more of a career based question, but
Yeah, I would definitely say um, engineering, and in terms of like how to put together a broadcast, like someone's still gonna have to build the robotic cameras and also plug them all in and 'cause if sport for sports, it's if it's you're traveling to the best game of the week, the stuff has to get brought there, has to get taken down, built up,
totally, yeah.
even if there is no one operating it. So engineering, like specifically broadcast engineering, but a lot of broadcast engineering now is also network engineering. Um, so if you're into like tech and stuff like that, but you also still want to be part of all these broadcasts and sports, those two lanes, we'll always need engineers and we'll always need networking engineers. As long as everything is on the cloud and on the internet and based in the network, those two jobs are great. Um, when it comes to, I would say, camera, learn and try to follow all the new trends, um, and be a multifaceted camera operator. Don't just be a studio camera operator. Don't be just a hard camera operator. Learn jib, learn handheld, learn steady. Um, Ronins, gimbals, there's all these different things that you have to like keep track of and try to be everyone's be on the cutting edge. So you should also be like keeping track of what the next big thing is. Robocams, like you mentioned, there's the rail cams, the sky cams. So there's camera, but there's a lot of different cameras to learn and get yourself acquainted with and things like that. So if you do want to focus on a position, just make sure you're learning and focusing on like what's coming next.
Right.
Whether that's video, camera, audio, um, it's good to be very well rounded, but it's also good to be um, like an expert in your field. So if you want to go the well-rounded route, you could definitely do that. There are plenty of studio people I know that they just do kind of every job, and that's great because on their schedule they're assigned to what is needed, and they can fill in on things great. But also, there's a spot for someone who is an expert in their field, and that will carry them because they're known to be an expert in their field.
Right, understood. And when you talk about being versatile, I mean, I feel like you're very versatile as well. You work in both news and live event sports. What would you say like how does it contrast in the sense of like how are you preparing for it or like what goes into your day to day between sports and the news coverage?
So it's kind of funny because I ended up in news after sports, and usually it goes the other way around. Um, just based on everything and the way it's gone, this has been a good landing spot for my full time work. Um, but I would say the sports gave me a good ability to adapt on the fly because a lot of news is very cookie cutter, basic. Like I'm talking studio news, not out in the field. Um, or even when we do events like the conventions, the inauguration, there's so much that is we're hoping to script, we're really following a rundown, but when you're covering sports, there is no rundown because you don't know how the game or match is gonna happen.
Right.
So a lot of sports is, especially the remote stuff, um, one, just the build and, like, all the technical stuff, you get a lot more acquainted with it than if you're in a studio because every day you walk into a studio, everything's built, everything's plugged in. You just have to make sure the camera kinda works. And you don't really get that hands-on of like, okay, this is how it gets plugged in, da 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 da. So a lot of the sports stuff working in remotes um, made me extra prepared for all of a sudden we got to go on some remotes for CNN. And guess what? I know how stuff gets plugged in. I know how some stuff works more so than the person that may just work in the studio all day, every day. Um, so that gave me an advantage for when we do have remote events. Um, and I would say in terms of the contrast that one helps the other. Um, and I would say there's not too much contrast in the sense of coming from different worlds. I think camera wise, there's different creative elements that you could bring to the other. Um, so, like for example, at when we do bump shots on the jib, and they might be like calm and normal, but then at ESPN we learned like try to make some really cool, crazy moves out of your jib moves that make the show a little more visually appealing. And then you show a director at CNN stuff like that, and they're like, "Oh, that's really cool. Can you do that again?" And so I
Right.
would say there's more crossover than contrast in that sense. The end product they may want to look a little different, but there's enough crossover where I think they actually meld together very well.
Right. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Now kind of talking about advice for students and career reflection. One question I was wondering is like, what's one misconception that people may have about working in sports broadcasting?
Ooh, misconception. Well, definitely it's not glamorous. You have to get dirty. Um, this is technical side. I'm not talking on air because that life is a little nicer, a little different. But
Right.
I'm talking strictly like technical. It's gonna be dirty, long hours, um, late nights, weekends. Like if you really want to do it, you have to give up fun time and family time and stuff like that, especially in the beginning, um, because you're trying to get as many live reps as you can because nothing else can create that. So you have to work as much as you can in the beginning to get those reps and also meet those people, do good work, and like that snowball effect I said, right? Like you're gonna work a lot in the beginning because you have to get the snowball as big as you can. And then once that snowball starts rolling downhill, you can lose pieces here and there, but it's still just gonna expand and it's almost like this inertia, natural inertia will happen. Um, where it will come together. But yeah, it definitely I think it's been said, but the misconception of like, oh, it's really glamorous or it is fun. It's the best job in the world, but it's gonna be a lot of nights and weekends, and you're gonna have to get dirty. You're gonna be in the rain. You're gonna be in the snow. You're gonna be in the extreme heat, the extreme cold. Um, So that would be the biggest piece of advice is that, like, just show up with a good attitude and work hard because some of the situations are just gonna suck.
What is the next success for you in the sense of like what are your goals at this point in your career? Going forward, you've done a lot of big events. Is there something that you want to cover that you haven't? Um, Anything like that?
So I think my biggest thing is a lot of times, I get lucky enough where I'm filling in, um, on big events, and I think my biggest thing would be asked to be ahead of the season to be invited to do like a package where, let's say, especially NFL would be a big goal because I have not shot, I've shot Division 1 football, but I haven't shot NFL football. So, I think the biggest goal would be to be on one of these NFL crews that travels week by week to different stadiums. Um, and so I think overall, the singular goal would be shooting an NFL game, but the overarching goal would be to get offered a package of games or events or whatever it is, where it's like, hey, we need you for the whole season. Can you be one of our guys? Um, that to me would be like a huge honor and to be something where I feel like I'm wanted in the sense of like my skills are good enough and we're committing to you like for a whole season, can you commit to us? Like that'd be a huge cool ask to have, and that'd be an honor to do. So that I would say is my biggest goal.
That's awesome. I think it's a great goal. And
Yeah.
kind of speaking on that, like of the things you've accomplished in your journey, in your career, what would you, look back and say you're most proud of?
Oof. Most proud of. It is the way you said it, where every now and then you have to like step back and be like, wow, like 5 years ago, I was just starting out, or however many years it's been. Um, I think I'm most proud of the fact that, um, it is a very individualistic type of career in the sense of it is what you want. Like, if you are super fine with just shooting some high school sports, like, you could totally do that. But it's a lot of it has been like, this is what I want, and I'm really going to work hard for it. And then when you pull out and look at the big picture of like how far I've come, how much further I want to go, but also living in the moment and stepping back and being like, wow, I really have done a lot of good things and I feel very good about what I've done. And taking that to be like, okay, but now let's keep it going. Let's like keep this train on the tracks and like keep it going. So I think my proudest thing is just the overall trajectory. And that feeling of being grateful where I am now, but also looking back and being like, you know, I've done a lot and I've really enjoyed doing what I did, but also being able to be like, that trajectory is going up and I want it to keep going up. So,
That's awesome. Well, I think that's a great way to end it off. I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate your time. What a great episode to start season two. I'll definitely keep in touch. It's always great to see you around here at Sacred Heart.
yeah, thank you, Chase. Appreciate it. And I love coming back and helping out and being a part of things like this. So, anytime you want the sequel, I'll come back for more. So,
Absolutely, would love it.